dovakin, alaksin los varin, wahdain votul mafreka asfal, akvinorok pagran, furason zindrozan, dovakin, vahin, kogan mutral, uzra nu, kuldu all, one back, lingravod akfinte, bosik fondo finkan. dovakin, alaksin los varin, wahdain votul mafreka asfal, akvinorok pagran, furason zindrozan, dovakin, vahin, kogan mutral, dovakin, alaksin los varin, wahdain votul mafreka asfal, akvinorok pagran, furason zindrozan, dovakin, vahin, kogan.
Arise of the Dovakin, Chapter 2. I'd like to say I met death with some dignity, like a true Nord, but that's not entirely true. I didn't cry, though my eyes welled up, nor did I shout or beg or scream my denial at this. I was far too numb for that. I did, however, wet myself. Hardly the mark of a great hero. But I wasn't a great hero. I was a regular man who had just been teleported into some kind of Game of Thrones nightmare, and here I was about to have my head chopped off, and all because I woke up on a fucking cart when I should have been packing liver. I couldn't stand to look at the head in the basket, so I turned my view to watch my executioner raise his axe, still dripping the arterial blood of the last victim. As such, I was in perfect view to see what came over the mountain. With another roar, the massive great beast flew overhead, black as coal with wings that seemed to blot out the sun. I wasn't the only one to see it. "What in oblivion is that?" someone else shouted close by. "Sentries," I heard Shebitch say. "What do you see?" "Look around you, you dozy cunt." The thing landed directly above us on the tower. It was a dragon, and it was looking right at me as the executioner stumbled with the crash of wings and impact. There was a cracking noise as talons on its wings dug straight into the rock of the tower. Eyes the color of blood regarded me as if I was prey. Eyes that looked at me with an intelligence that was far greater than the beast should have. Those eyes were at least as intelligent as a human's, and it was looking right at me. Its head was a huge spiked thing as it let out another roar. Above it, clouds rushed together as if a storm was approaching on a DVD set to fast forward. And fireballs began to rain from the sky. Quillboy was in front of me, almost as if he was trying to protect me. People were shouting. I could hear Tullius screeching about protecting the people. My vision had gone blurry. All I could smell was heat and straw and blood. My ears were pounding from the noise and commotion. Ever been in shock? Well, I was. Granted, it could be argued that I'd been in shock for about the last 6 or 7 minutes. But now I was truly out of it. I just lay there looking up at this thing. Molten gobbets of rock fell around us, shattering into shards of flaming stone. From its open mouth, a ball of blue energy spat out, ethereal, and almost looking like it was made up of lightning that was only a quarter charged. Something thudded into me and I rolled. Now I was looking at the floor, as more and more people kept shouting and screaming. I felt hands grab my tunic and haul me to my feet. The strength was prodigious. I was lifted as easily as I would lift a young child. Trying to clear the fog and haze from my head, I turned to see Ralof standing in front of me. "Get up! The gods won't give us another chance! This way!" I realized then that I had somehow been spared the executioner's axe, but now I might end up being an entree to a fucking dragon. Looking at my feet, I could see Stead Axeman. He was dead, though what had killed him I neither knew nor cared. I wonder if Shebitch had gotten it as well. I saw Ralof standing in the doorway to the keep. He was insistently waving me over. This time, my legs actually did what I wanted them to do. They took me in his direction. Staggering and disorientated, I practically fell through the open doorway as Ralof slammed it shut. Inside were 4 men and a woman. Ralof and 3 others, 2 lying on the floor, 1 up the stairway to my right. The woman was lying in a fetal position. She had been wounded, I noticed with detachment, her bloody hands clasping at her belly. Jarl Ulfric, Ralof spoke in awe. I was bent double, heaving great lungfuls of air, forcing the air that was beginning already to be tinged with the taste of smoke into my body, trying to clear my clamoring head. What is that thing? Could the legends be true? Legends don't burn down villages, said a deep, stern voice. I straightened and looked at Jarl Ulfric Stormcloak. His face sported a neatly kept goatee and a wide mouth. His nose seemingly even more hooked and large without the gag. He held a resonance and inner power that spoke of great strength of will, if not character. He seemed to show little concern for the wounded woman. Or me, for that matter. Granted, I was hardly an inspirational sight, heaving breath, blood and piss-stained tunic, and my hands still bound, eyes wide and almost glazed over. But at least I wasn't cold anymore. Back home, I was of an average build, but amongst these broad frames I could look almost puny. They were without a doubt fighting men. Ulfric barely looked at me. There would be a time when he looked at me a great deal. Not that way. Didn't I say I was straight? But right now, it appeared as if I was nothing to him. We need to move, now, he ordered. Like she-bitch, he spoke in a tone that would brook no argument. With me, up the tower, Ralof said, and proceeded to run up the steps. Up? Had this guy never watched a horror film? The problem with up is that it only leads to high grounds and fatal drops. But I followed. I figured if I was going to survive this mess, then I'd stick to others who seemed to know what they were doing. About halfway up, the wall caved inwards with a crash of falling rock. The stonework slammed into one man, crushing him against the far wall. I heard the sickening crunch of bone. How many bodies and deaths had I seen now? How many more till I was driven insane? The dragon's head filled the gap, and now I could smell it. It smelt of dank, dark earth like fruit left lying to rot, and of heat and smoke and hate. This was no noble beast of legend. This was some dark hellspawn of evil. Whatever this dragon was doing, there was nothing altruistic in it. Its maw opened, and I thought I heard a voice speaking words I couldn't understand. But something in me knew what was coming. Ralof was still on his feet next to me, looking at the thing. I grabbed him by the cuirass and pulled him forward, towards the wall, and we both hit the stonework. Not a moment too soon. From the teeth-filled gape, a torrent of flames spewed forth. The heat was intense, like a bonfire going off in your face. The very air seemed stolen from my lungs as I shut my mouth tight. I squeezed my eyes shut to keep out the glare. I held on to Ralof as the whooshing noise of the flames-breathed weapon tapered off. Then the dragon was gone. Its great wings beat, and it leapt off the tower away from us. The town of Helgen was ablaze. Nearly all of its buildings on fire in the space of a couple of minutes. Bodies lay strewn all about the place, Stormcloak, Imperial, and townsfolk alike. None were being spared. This was a massacre. I felt like I was going to vomit again. I didn't. I had eaten that morning, but maybe after pissing myself, my body was being nice. My new good buddy Ralof, however, wasn't. See the inn on the other side? All I saw was what used to be a building still on fire. Both of us stood now on the lip of the hole the dragon had made. I could have stretched up and not touched the top. The wind, hot and laden with ash from the dragon's storm, whipped our hair around like a shampoo advert. Jump through the roof and keep going. You what now? But I leapt. If someone had told me to do this in any other situation, then I'd have laughed and told them you go first. But this wasn't normal. I barely thought it over. I gauged the distance and jumped. The gap was about 10 feet down into the thatched roof. I landed with both feet and by some miracle managed it without breaking my knees. The thatch had just enough left in it to arrest most of my momentum before I plunged through it into the level below. I landed even harder, the foot wraps taking none of the impact. Scratched from the straw of the roof, I didn't even notice the hit as I was too busy throwing my bound hands out in front of me before I went face first into a pillar. I hopped down the next level and looked back up, though this now collapsing and smouldering roof. I could see Ralof waving at me, but barely heard him call out. "Go on! We will follow you when we can." I did so. Spluttering out of the inn, I suddenly realized that the Quill Boy was still alive. He was shouting at a small boy who was gazing out into the blazing courtyard. "Hamming! You need to get over here, now!" I felt a momentary tightness in my chest as I saw the dragon's great shadow fly overhead, and it wasn't fear for myself. The boy was about 9, the same age as my nephew. Thankfully, the child Hamming didn't tarry, but headed back toward us. "That a boy," Quill said. "You're doing great." He shouted what could have been a name as the dragon's fire breath came out again. There was a whoosh of air and a house nearby practically exploded outward from the heat. I ducked instinctively, raising my hands to cover my head as splinters and flaming brands rained down on us. Nothing major hit me, thankfully, but I wasn't trusting to luck for long. Quillboy shouted a warning that went unheard in the noise of the fires. He noticed me for the first time then, and I shit you not, he looked genuinely pleased to see me. "Still alive, prisoner? Good. Keep close to me if you want to stay that way." Looking at an old man wearing a leather apron, he said, "Gunhar, stay with the boy. I have to find General Tullius and join the defense." "God's guide you, Hadvar," the old man wheezed. So that was my reluctant guard's name. Hadvar. He had a certain quality, no doubt about that. That old man and the child both looked at him with something bordering on love. Me? Well, he had stood by while She-Bitch was going to cut my head off, so I wasn't exactly brimming with devotion. But he had a sword and looked most of the way competent. Hadvar moved off, and I followed him around the sides of the keep I had exited. I had to hop over another dead body to keep up with him. "Stay close to the wall." I already was, hugging it as much as I could as we jumped from open ground to another narrow pathway between the keep's wall and another outbuilding that was fast approaching a pile of ash. And a good job we did as well, as the dragon settled on the top above our heads. I saw now that its body wasn't smooth, but covered in long, jagged spikes that swept back like a dagger all across its belly. As I watched, fire spewed forth again. I actively sagged now, sweating from fear, exhaustion, and simple information overload. As the dragon roared, I screamed with it, venting frustration and terror. The noise I made could barely be heard over its titanic dirge. Barely 20 minutes had passed in this nightmare for me, and I could feel the strains on my brain beginning to fray. If this kept up much longer, for perhaps only the second or third time in my life, I genuinely feared for my sanity. "It's you and me, prisoner. Stay close." Hadvar was slapping on my shoulders, coaxing me to my feet. We blundered, half-blind from smoke and ash, through a gaggle of defenders, whose actions seemed to only annoy the beast rather than hurt it. I couldn't quite make out what they were doing, but caught flashes of light and the more familiar whistling sound of arrows leaving bows. I weaved through the mass of people, following Hadvar as best I could. We cleared a couple of ruined buildings, clambering over furniture and crossbeams that were leaking black smoke. As I cleared the final building, I heard Hadvar shout, "Ralof, you damn traitor! Out of my way!" Blinking back smoke-fueled tears, I saw Ralof blocking Hadvar's path. Somewhere in the confusion, the man, Nord, Stormcloak, Jarl, Rebel, had gained himself an axe. "We're escaping, Hadvar. You're not stopping us this time." Ralof was alone, so I could only assume the "we" was meant to include me as well. "Fine!" Hadvar snarled. "I hope that dragon takes you all to Sovngarde." Speaking of dragons, our resident nightmare swept down along the town's wall. It moved in like a bird of prey, and I noticed that it only had back legs, not front ones. Where the front ones should be was where its wings came from. Its black claws were open, and they grabbed a hapless shoulder from the wall. "You! Come on, into the keep!" Ralof shouted in my direction. I didn't need telling twice. I saw Hadvar's face, guilt and hope mingle there, and he seemed a decent enough sort, but damn it, he had still stood by while she-bitch wanted to make me a head shorter. There really was no question. I went with Ralof. And as for Hadvar, it would be some time before I learned what became of him. We burst through the door like action movie stars, and Ralof shut it behind us. The door was solid oak and fitted the frame well. Much of the cacophony was blotted out. The screaming, the roaring, the ash, the smoke, all gone. I only noticed then that my ears were ringing loudly in the silence. The room we were in was round, clearly part of another tower. A red carpet rug on the floor that was clean until Ralof and myself traipsed muddy boots and foot wraps through it. Two portcullis-like doors to the left and right of the one we had come through. Animal heads were stuffed onto plaques on the wall, and overhead was a large chandelier of wood. At the end, or is that apex, of the room was a table and two chairs. A body lay there. How many dead had I seen today? I couldn't tell. Wearing the same style of clothes as Ralof. My companion went over to it. He knelt beside it. "We will meet again in Sovngarde, brother," he said softly. Turning to look at me, he rose. "Looks like we're the only ones who made it." His face turned awed. "That thing was a dragon, no doubt, just like the children's stories and legends. The harbingers of the end times." Well, wasn't that just fucking perfect? I couldn't have some weird hallucination, Star Trek, teleport, slider, dimensional hopping, My Little Pony, spell gone wrong, regular fuckery. It had to be a bloody apocalypse to boot. We'd better get moving. Here, let me see if I can get these bindings off. I'd almost forgotten that my hands were still tied. Numbly I raised them as Ralof took a dagger and sliced neatly through them. They fell away, and I began rubbing my wrists to restore the circulation. The cords had cut white welts into my skin that reddened as blood began to return to its normal flow. "You might as well take Gunjar's gear," Ralof said. He was gesturing to the body on the floor. "He won't be needing it anymore. Get it on you and let's get moving." I sat on the chair, one leg either side of poor Gunjar. I drew in a deep, shuddering breath. "Can we take a moment, please?" My voice came out slightly hoarse. "So," Ralof raised an eyebrow, "you can talk. I was beginning to wonder if you were some sort of cripple." "Yes, I can talk," I replied, looking up at him as I bent over Gunjar and began to undo his boots. They were laced up the back of the leg, and I loosened the leather, which was awkward due to the pins and needles in my fingers. "Where the fuck am I?" "Or what's a fuck?" Ralof asked. "It's a curse word." "Ah." Ralof rolled the tongue in his mouth. "Simple, but effective. I like it. Where did you learn it? It is no tongue I have heard of." Ralof handed me a battered metal tankard. It was one of two on the table, and it was filled with water. I sipped it, then quickly drained it while he did the same with his own. The water was ice cold, a welcome respite from the heat of the dragon's inferno. It was crisp and was possibly the best drink I'd ever had. I had one boot off and began working on the other. "I don't know what language it is," I replied, digging at a knot with a practically non-existent fingernail. "Yeah, I bite them. Have done since I was a small child. And I don't know where I am." "You are in Skyrim, home of the Nords. Did you not realize that when you crossed the border?" "And just where is Skyrim?" "I don't understand." "Neither do I." I felt like I was on the verge of tears again. But I wasn't about to cry in front of this man. I knew instinctively it would lessen me in his eyes. "You look Nord, but you don't sound it," Ralof said. "Your accent is nothing I've ever heard before." "I get the impression my home is a long way from here," I replied. I was able to get the other boots off, and gladly undid the foot rags on my feet. Gunjar's boots were an almost perfect fit, only just on the loose side. Made from a mix of leather and wool, they would take some getting used to, but were far from uncomfortable. The soles, made from hardened animal skin, made little noise as I tied the laces back up. The cuirass was fastened in much the same way as the boots. Loosening straps and friction buckles at the side, I was able to pull the tunic off the dead man. I felt rather ghoulish at this, taking the clothes of the dead, but I could hardly walk around in this tunic. Hefting the cuirass onto the table, I undid the hemp belt at my waist. Extracting myself from the tunic with its blood and urine felt like shedding an old dirty skin. If Ralof noticed my accidents, he gave no sign. I pulled the cuirass onto myself. It was rather on the large side, its previous owner being broader in the shoulders and chest than I was. "An adventurer, huh? You must have some tales to tell." "If we survive this spit, I'll gladly tell you." "Stories and mead," Ralof smiled. "Fine rewards to stay alive for." I almost smiled in return. Almost. "What's your name? I couldn't quite catch it when you gave it to Hadvar." "It's Fionn," I said, fastening the last of the buckles and giving it a final tug. "Of the silvered bat, was it?" "Bolt. Fionn of the silvered bolt." "Well, Fionn of the silvered bolt, I am Ralof of Riverwood, and tonight we shall tell stories of battle in faraway lands with a fire to warm us, meat in our bellies, and mead in our hands." Now that sounded good. The mead part, anyway. We both looked up as the dragon's roar sounded again, muted through the stone of the tower as it was. "Assuming we both live to see tonight, that is." Ralof pointed to Gunjar's weapons. "Give that axe a few practice swings. I'm going to see if we can get out of here." He went over to one of the exits from the room. The weapon was about 1.5 feet long, a stout wooden handle, the bottom half covered with leather to improve grip. The head was a single sharp blade with a counterweight on the other side. It was heavy, made from iron, I guess, despite it being designed for use in a single hand. Obviously meant for someone overall stronger than I was. I tested it, swinging it from one side to the other, and twirling it in one hand, getting a feel for it. What's that? How do I know how to use an axe? Well, I don't, but I was hardly going to tell Ralof that, was I? Plus, I figured the basic were easy. Stick the sharp bit in somebody other than yourself. "Ah, it's locked!" Ralof shouted, hitting the metal collet with one hand. "Let's try the other one." Turned out the other door was locked too. "There's no way to open it from this side." So we're stuck. The axe drooped in one hand. Ralof whipped round. "Take cover! Imperials are coming!" My stomach and bowels clenched almost painfully. This was it. I was going to fight. I had had maybe 3 fights in my life. One of those was in school, and certainly not with a giant axe in my hand. And there would be no time out. If I didn't fight, I was going to die. And Ralof too. That galvanized me somewhat. Beneath his outward stalwartism, there was a nobility in Ralof that I really didn't want to see extinguished. "Get that door open!" That voice. She-bitch. Throughout our lives, we all have instances where we wish horrible violence on people. But for most sane people, they stay as just that. Wishes. This time, I was actually going to do it. It's a strange sensation knowing you're about to enter a full-on battle. Most fights do not end in death. In this day and age, anyway. Well, not in my day and age, anyway. For a second, I had the notion that it wouldn't happen, that she-bitch wouldn't kill me, that she might let me go. I got rid of that notion quickly. That was a good way to get myself killed. Shebitch had no intention of letting me live. Raloff and I pulled ourselves against a wall away from view. There was a noise of a key turning in a lock, and a portcullis opened and 2 figures entered. One was just an Imperial soldier. The other was definitely Shebitch. Her armor was still clean, and she looked like she had managed to get away from the fighting.